This video is about the list of questions or the pointers that needs to be considered when onboarding a new source into your cloud storage as a part of data ingestion process. Before we dive into the pointers, let us understand the use case in depth. Assume an organization as a part of data modernization has decided to migrate its on-premise data warehouse system to a cloud-based solution. This existing warehouse system uses the data from a wide variety of sources to derive the business insight. This migration will occur in two phases. First, we will create a data lake in the cloud storage. Second, we will have a data warehouse in the cloud. For the data warehouse, we will use a lift and modernize approach to migrate the artifacts from the legacy system to cloud warehouse solution. For data lake, we will use batch-based data ingestion jobs to extract the data from these dependent source to cloud storage. Now let us understand the list of pointers that needs to be considered when onboarding a new source into a cloud storage. These questions or pointers needs to be asked as a part of a requirement gathering. First would be the type of source. A source can be a JDBC source or an API. For file-based ingestion, there are two patterns. One is a push-based strategy where the data is dropped in the inbound location by an external vendor. And another one is a pull-based strategy where the data has to be pulled from the external server using a file transfer tool. Again, this pull-based strategy is usually done as a part of data ingestion pipeline in the acquisition layer. Next would be the number of parallel connections that can be established with the source by a data ingestion pipeline. This is a deciding factor in the number of parallel read tasks that can be initiated by the data ingestion pipeline. Say, for example, it is for a Spark-based JDBC application, it is the num partition that decides the number of parallel read threads. Before we move into the third point, let us understand what happens in an organization when onboarding a new data source. From an organization perspective, any new source that will be onboarded should undergo an internal governance process. The outcome of this governance process is basically the classification of data based on its sensitivity. So these these objects or the tables under these sources are classified based on this sensitivity in various tiers. So a highly sensitive data needs to be anonymized. That's the point here. Next is the number of environments associated with the data source. A data source can have multiple lower environment and a production environment. The lower environment data are mostly fabricated or synthetic, whereas in case of production data are real use case, real data, and are used for deriving the business insight. Similarly, the cloud can have multiple environment, a dev environment where the data ingestion pipelines are built and tested. Then it can have integration and a production environment where the actual DI jobs are running. Below are the pointers that has to be considered when a data source has single environment, that is production. The first pointer is related to scheduling. The lower environment data ingestion pipeline, and that should never run in parallel with the production data ingestion pipeline if the source has only a single environment. If both the pipelines are kind of scheduled in such a way that kind of run in parallel, then it can eat up all the connection in the source, thereby leading to contention issue at the source. Second pointer is related to anonymization. If the production data that is being brought into the lower environment of cloud and this production data has any sensitive PI related information, then it has to be anonymized. Next is the number of objects to be ingested. Ask for the number of incremental or the full load tables or the object associated with the source. Again, this can be finalized or identified by the data engineer as a part of source profiling. Next pointer is about reducing the number of objects that needs to be ingested. A source can have multiple internal tables that capture the audit information, logging information, or maybe the status information related to stored procedures. Identify these tables with the help of source SME. Check with the source SME if any value is derived from these tables. If not, ask if it is mandatory to include them in the migration. Next is the frequency of ingestion. It can be daily or weekly or monthly. And again, it depends upon the downstream consumer need for downstream consumer for the data. Then ask for any maintenance window for the source. Batch jobs should never be scheduled during this window. SLA is one of the critical points that needs to be considered in requirement gathering, because this is the time which the data has to be available. Daily refresh data has to be available within this point of time. So the factors that are affecting this would be the downstream consumers for the data. It can be a stored procedure depending on the source, or it can be a separate team that is pulling the data from this specific S3 location. Next, ask for any nuclear rules that needs to be incorporated as a part of data ingestion pipelines. Next would be the dependency with the downstream. The ingestion of a new data source can introduce code change at the downstream stored procedure or at the orchestrator. Say for example, a scenario wherein which the newly introduced or the ingested object is going to be used by the downstream stored procedure to enrich the existing business logic. So the existing business logic is implemented let us assume the existing business logic is implemented in a stored procedure. So the stored procedure, so this stored procedure needs to be modified to accommodate the new logic. Again, this stored procedure can be scheduled and orchestrated using a separate orchestrator like Airflow. Again, the orchestrator has to check whether the specific DI has completed for the day, and only then the stored procedure has to be triggered. This again introduces a change at the orchestrated level. So these are the couple of places where introducing a new data source can affect the downstream system. Next one is the transformation needed. So ask for any specific transformation that are needed as a part of data ingestion. Again, this is factored out based on the downstream requirement. The scenarios which we have encountered is for an API-based ingestion, the response was a nested JSON. So the nested JSON was kind of exploded and flattened to make it more consumable friendly for the downstream system. In our case, it was a data warehouse system. Second point is cleansing of column names. Okay, all the column names which contained special character or spaces will be replaced with an underscore. Again, that is That is a standard transformation which is done as a part of the data ingestion pipeline. Certain data enrichment logic, including the joins with multiple tables, can be shifted from warehouse to data lake due to the availability of cheap compute in the data lake. Do comment out the list of pointers that you consider when onboarding a new source to data lake. Thanks for watching this video.